ARCs are free. Wow, hasn't this turned into a giant shitstorm? Straight up, I believe that ARCs should be free. That is kind of the point. You get an honest review of your work in exchange for the advanced reader copy, and that in turn helps you promote your book because it makes other readers notice that somebody else has read your book, whether they think it's good, bad, sideways. It helps them decide whether they're going to purchase your book. Charging for an ARC is like manipulating your reviews, and that's just not ethical. Most of you will know that the idea behind Patreon is that the people who enjoy your work basically subscribe to a certain level of funding that they give you in exchange for additional content. Now, I've got no problem at all with your ARC being included as a kind of added bonus to your patrons, but you gotta be real careful how you do it. You can give away your ARC for free. You don't have to print it and ship it and then wait for a review. You can actually just send a file for free and send it to that person. So it's not as if you're losing income or it's costing you income to distribute ARCs. So there's no real justification from a financial perspective as to why you should be charging for your ARCs. Including your ARC as an unadvertised perk of being a patron, in that you literally do not advertise that you will give people your ARC if they are your patrons, I think that's okay. Or if you do include your ARC as an advertised perk of membership, it needs to be not the major selling point, and it needs to be included for all tiers of paying membership. Otherwise, you get thrown in a big old pot of boiling tea and people start calling you unethical and start going to town on you on YouTube and shredding your career. Even then, I think you're walking a really fine line including your ARC as an advertised perk of membership, because ARCs should be free. So you're opening yourself up to criticism. Like I said, I don't really have a problem with people giving out their ARCs as a surprise bonus to their patrons. But it gets tricky if you start advertising it as a perk. As for the other criticisms that are flying around YouTube in regards to this issue, one of the reasons I feel the need to make this video, because I'm not really interested in getting in other people's tea, is that I feel like people are forgetting that in all industries, there are people who advertise services that they are not technically qualified to provide. That is why, as a consumer, you need to do your research. Now, I'm not saying that that makes it okay to run mentorship programs or how to edit your book programs when one of the major criticisms of your books is that they're poorly edited. But these things exist in all industries. There are people who are looking to make money and are not potentially going about it in the most ethical ways. Often these people charge way more than the service really deserves. I've experienced that in the physio world. So when I was trying to learn about marketing, I wanted to learn more about like marketing in the health field. I didn't want to learn about all the other marketing that you can learn about. And there are a number of people who advertise themselves to be specialist health marketers, and they'll teach you how to run a bazillion-dollar clinic and all of this stuff. And basically I walked away from those events with a lot less money and very little information that I didn't already know. What I learned is to make money in healthcare, you have to have some luck on your side and you have to compromise on patient care, and I'm not willing to do that. So you basically have to treat every shoulder and every back as if they're the same, regardless of the fact that they're not all the same. And you have to try and get people to buy into these big programs. Buying into programs and buying into mentorship is how people make a lot of money. Now, the people who are running these programs are really running them off the backbone of their success and their experience. And in the physio world, it can be really hard to tell what that actually means and how that translates into like dollars per annum of profit and things like that. In the book world and the world of AuthorTube and BookTube, it's not as difficult to tell. You can go on to Goodreads, for example, and look up the reviews of this author, and you'll see a lot of criticism about the editing of their books. So if that's the case, don't pay for a program where this person teaches you to edit, because the rest of the world is saying they don't know how to do that. Don't join that program. Don't pay a fortune for their editing advice if they're not an editor. Just pay an editor. You as the consumer can look up reviews for businesses. So for example, if you were looking for a new dentist, you would look for dentists in your area and you would look at their Google reviews. If someone said, this dentist accidentally pulled 7 teeth out of my face and then went, whoops, and that's the Google review, you're not going there. So if you are looking for a particular service or mentorship in a particular area, Google that author and look up their Goodreads site, look up their Amazon page, and look what the feedback is from the general public. If it sounds like they could conceivably be considered an expert in that area, well, okay, then that's up to you whether you then spend the money. But if it doesn't sound like that is their strength, don't pay them for it. And this is where selling your ARCs becomes really problematic. So not only should advanced reader copies be free because you're getting a review in exchange for them reading the book and not having to pay for the book, but the people who are inclined to pay for your ARCs are likely to be very pro your work. So they're not going to be giving a fair, unbiased review. They're not going to be saying things like, oh, there were plot holes everywhere and your editing was a pile of shit and typos were everywhere. So then it makes it harder for the consumer to actually make an educated decision about whether that person has any right to be charging for an editing service. So while I don't agree with what has happened and what is happening, I've been watching this for like at least a year going, I don't know about this. And you don't have to look very far to find things that should make you a little bit hesitant before signing up to these various programs that are out there, not just this one person's programs that everybody's now piling on about. In just the same way you wouldn't hire the first editor you found on Google to go through your manuscript, you should also be doing some research about who are these people that are running programs and what are their qualifications to run these programs. In all industries, there are people who are out to scam you, sometimes because they're assholes, sometimes because they're poorly educated or haven't thought through the impact of their actions, and sometimes it's because they're greedy. So as a consumer, I'm just saying, be aware of where you put your dollars. And with that being said, I want to say that there is more than one person on AuthorTube, BookTube, whatever you want to call it, that is trying to do things that are less than ethically ideal. And it's okay for you to call that out. It's okay for you to say, hey, look, mate, I don't know if you're doing things to the best ethical standard that you could. It's okay to write reviews. Those sorts of things are great because they build awareness in the community and they help other people who might not be really aware of issues going in become more aware of what's happening. Again, say this isn't right, but don't try and troll one person when it's not only one person who is doing this. Have a conversation, change the narrative of what is the ethical standards in the writing community that you're willing to accept. That being said, ARCs should be free, and people who do not have credentials and do not have specific expert training in certain fields should not be selling for huge sums of money programs that are basically designed to screw people out of money. We should have a conversation, a broader conversation about what are the ethical standards within the writing community, and we should make the consumers aware of those ethical standards as much as we can so that they can make an educated decision about which artists they support and maybe which ones they don't. My only interest in this tea is that we actually have that conversation about what the ethical standards within the writing community should be.